A ton of leaks happened across the holidays in regards to the Nintendo Switch 2. We now know the shape of the system, the fact that the Joy-Cons have an extended side to create a magnetic rail rather than sliding on like the other ones. And most recently, images of the motherboard itself have surfaced, all as the system goes into production. All with Nintendo saying nothing at all. Just Nintendo going like, we're big enough that you'll care when we drop it, so who cares? But there are so many factory leaks, even to the point where Digital Foundry, Eurogamer's Digital Foundry, are analyzing the motherboard, looking at the chips that are available, trying to predict the amount of power that the system's going to have. And there are now ongoing conversations as to the Nintendo Switch 2 having, and I quote, a disadvantage against the Steam Deck and the vast array of Windows PC handhelds. With a Samsung chip, clock speeds will be lower and power efficiency won't be as good. Although Digital Foundry do mention that the Switch being a fixed platform for games, like instead of a third-party machine or whatever, is a major positive that the competitors don't have. Foundry do note that the current rumors of the Switch 2 being comparable to PlayStation 4 Pro, this is an ongoing conversation, that is wishful thinking. Richard Ledbetter says to think more along the lines of base PlayStation 4 graphics performance, augmented with modern GPU features and solid ray tracing support. Ledbetter says, I'd also expect NVIDIA DLSS to do a lot of heavy lifting. DLSS is deep learning super sampling. It's a software-based upscaler, so you haven't got to worry about hefty hardware, which seems to be Nintendo's way of trying to compete, at least visually or to some degree, with the bigger systems on the market. Ledbetter does note that the computational cost of DLSS is very high when they've been testing DLSS overall and elsewhere, and it depends on the target frame rate or the resolution or whatever. Lining up with another ongoing conversation that the Nintendo Switch 2 will be a more capable system in docked mode and not handheld. If you want the juice on the go, it's only going to be for a shorter amount of time, which leads me to the god-awful question of, are there going to be more graphics options in my Switch games?
Yes.
Where I have to go, hey, can I get the nicer, shinier looking game, but it only runs for like 45 minutes?
Well, I guess you've you've already been doing that in a way, though, with Nintendo games by choosing whether to play them docked or not docked. Am I right? Am I right?
I don't. What do you mean? What do you mean?
Because there's a difference in fidelity when you play.
That's not in a menu, though.
No, I know, but what I mean is you've still been choosing to play one way or the other with concessions to what you're getting out of those games that you're playing. I know I'm just pulling.
This is some AEW Adam Copeland.
Straws.
This is some cope.
Yeah, very good, very good. I might be there, I might be coping a little bit. I'm overall, as I've mentioned to death, a non-diehard Nintendo fan. Came to Nintendo extremely late, played the Wii like everyone else, then jumped in properly with Switch, where I actually dove into Nintendo's back catalog. And as you know, I have been wanting an excuse to pick up the Switch for the longest time now, but I have found it in relation to the most recent consoles from Sony and Microsoft to be just completely underpowered, in my opinion.
Massively. Yeah.
I don't need a Nintendo system that is, going toe-to-toe with the PlayStation 5 Pro or the Xbox Series X, but I need a bit more juice than it currently has. So if we're hitting around PS4 level, which,
with modern...
Exactly.
I don't know anywhere near enough about the technical side, but the base hardware seems to be PS4.
Exactly. You've got those extra bells and whistles. You've got those upscalers that are going to be in there. That's not a bad ballpark for me. It's close enough, I guess, to the PS4 Pro when it all is considered. And I do think the jump, if that is kind of what we're playing with, will be substantial enough, at least for me, to kind of turn heads. Because like I say, I'm not looking for this thing to put out 4K 120 FPS natively.
PS5 Pro can't even do that.
Exactly. I just want something more than we currently have. I want to play Tears of the Kingdom, I'm so sorry, a game that I love, without the frame rate tanking or without so much pop in, and to even just be able to play it on my television in more than kind of 720p upscaled or whatever it is now.
What was the thing that me and you were arguing about yesterday?
Everything.
About whether or not, because I was saying I don't care about the tech side of it, the heftier side of it. Yeah. I don't need my games to reach the 4K 120s or whatever it is. I like nicer, smoother frame rates, but if it's a locked 30, that's still acceptable. And I'm not bothered about the graphics race or whatever overall. But that is going to be a conversation. You've kind of got like the PS5 Pro, even though it didn't sell very well, there's obviously teething problems with Sony's version of DLSS as well. You've got Xbox going, everything's an Xbox. You can play all of our games, stream them, just get your tablet, get your phone, whatever. And then Nintendo going like, because the thing is, if you read into Eurogamer's write-up on this, the Digital Foundry stuff, the Switch 2's chip is apparently like adjacent to something that you would find in like the automotive industry. Okay. Whereas the Switch 1, the Tegra processor or whatever was, was similar to something that you'd find in a mobile phone. and it's quite funny or whatever if you put that stuff alongside the bigger consoles that are reaching for these huge displays of all these different things, and then Nintendo just going like, what's the smallest, cheapest thing that we can do because we're mother effing Nintendo, and people are going to buy Mario, Kirby, Zelda, etc. going forward, and then you have to because they're so big, the rest of the industry is then forced to make Call of Duty has to have feature parity on PS5 Pro and the next Xbox and whatever, and the little tiny little Nintendo, Ford Focus Switch or whatever the hell it is.
That's never happening,
which is great.
That I believe that
Phil Spencer said it.
Well, this is the thing. I believe his promise that Call of Duty is going to come to the next Nintendo Switch. I did not believe for a second it's going to be feature parity and kind of nor should it. I think it'll be a version of that game. But when you're currently getting titles like Black Myth Wukong or Baldur's Gate 3 before it was eventually kind of changed, that couldn't even get parity between the Xbox Series S and the Xbox Series X. I don't know how you kind of step further down for certain releases. Obviously, there's stuff still coming out on Series X and Xbox One, but that's getting more and more rare, right? Especially as we edge ever closer to the next generation of consoles from the other two competitors. So I think we'll see a lot more third-party games. I don't think they'll be on par with the most premium edition of those games, but I'm sure we will get a version of Call of Duty, of Warzone, that comes to the next Switch. And I think that's fine. You know, people don't go to Nintendo these days for that third-party experience. They go for those those more Nintendo-feeling titles, whether they are their biggest franchises and properties or whether they're just things that kind of fit better on a Nintendo Switch, like your indie games that you want to play on the go and stuff like that. So this to me, I like it. I just want a reason to get the Switch 2. I don't want it to be another glorified Switch OLED, which
that's
is
what we were arguing about.
Yeah.
Because I will just take a note. That's fine.
Which is a great piece of kit, but Scott, surely you want a bit more. It's been 7 years.
Tiny bit,
8 years since the Switch 1.
It's going to be 2030, and then the Switch 2 will still be running on PS4 base hardware, which is hilarious. I don't care about them going that far forward. The Switch is a perfect system. Like, obviously, near perfect system. You have those issues, and you could see them stretching it with Tears of the Kingdom, where you have really jagged shadows, and obviously the scope of that game was incredible that they got it to run it all. Considering the amount of different things you can do in the physics system and everything. Fix that is what I'm fine with. It just depends who wants to develop for the Switch, but I love the Switch so much. All that stuff, that's a whole other conversation, is how modular the Switch 2 is. Obviously the form factor has leaked. It's extremely similar to the original, if not nigh on identical. They've smoothed over the Joy-Cons, and then like I said, they've changed the rail system to be more of a magnetic thing, which, because it has a bigger thing that you slide into the side of the tablet, that then means that you have bigger buttons on the side. You won't know what I mean, and we probably can't put a thing in the video because it'll get demonetized, but the people who have seen the leaks, or if you go on Google, will know what I mean. That solves enough issues for me, where it's just, I need a slightly more powerful Switch that solves the clear issues the original one had, because it was running on a 2010 Tegra processor, or whatever the hell that thing was.
Right.
I'm fine with a barely anything step up.
Here's the thing. I'm not coming on here as a PlayStation guy or an Xbox guy or whatever, saying that I want the Switch 2 to output photoreal, proper next gen Rockstar beating graphics or anything like that. I'm not even saying they should use the extra horsepower that the Switch 2 might have to make for better looking games necessarily. I would like that, but it's not the be all and end all. I want them to use that power for the things you said as well. Boost those frame rates, get something like Tears of the Kingdom running at an incredibly high native resolution and a much steadier frame rate. Go to 120, who knows? Let's reach for the stars and go even higher if you want. Like, there are ways to utilize that power beyond just raw graphics that I don't think would take away from Nintendo's ethos of keeping things I don't want to say less ambitious, because it's not less ambitious, but in terms of the technology, they're not, like you said, they're not chasing that graphical sort of hit, and they're not using that as a real marketing thing, and it's to their benefit right now. But there's just so much you can do with that extra technology that I think would benefit their design ethos to allow them to push genres and what's capable within their games from an interactive standpoint, as opposed to just using that hard power for, I don't know, more polygons on Mario's mustache or something.
I think that's ultimately my thing, is that the reason I love the idea of a half step sort of step up for the next sequel console is that it's almost that Sonic meme incarnate, that whole, pay developers more for smaller games, etc. It gets it closer to getting away from all of the overblown, ridiculous, broken AAA toss that we put up with nearly every year. And I know that so far, obviously right now we have no idea what the rest of 2025 is going to look like, but the slate of games looks incredible. So there's a chance that stuff all comes out, everything looks great, and we get away from the likes of a Suicide Squad or whatever the hell it is, an Anthem, something like that. Anthem's 6 years old this year.
Don't say
Just
that.
thought of that, didn't I?
We're going to probably do a video on the games that are turning 10 years old. That's bad enough.
That's disgusting. But still, the idea of refining, the technology side of it and making visions work for the tech as opposed to just throwing tech at the problem, which I think is the PS5 Pro's thing, where half the games didn't even work at launch because they couldn't get Sony's DLSS stuff to work. I see Nintendo's approach as part of the solution, even though there's the naked business reality that they are just going, we're Nintendo and we could sell you a potato and you'd still buy it.
That's what I have a problem with,
Which is true.
As a casual Nintendo fan, I need a reason to buy the Switch 2 beyond it just being a Switch 2. And that is either going to come in the form of absolutely must-play launch games that I can't get anywhere else, which you probably won't have, or it's some kind of technological leap that entices me and gives me something, again, that I can't do on the original Switch. And if it kind of has neither, then I'm happy to wait. I know it won't matter what I do. It's going to sell regardless. People are going to jump on it. But I need something. I need something to justify that cost, because so many times the PS5 Pro is a great example of it, man. Like, so many times I have bought into something this generation on a promise, and I'm sick of buying into things on a promise. I want at least something. I want at least something that grounds me day one, that gives me an experience. And if it's just the Switch again, slightly a little bit better, with no new games or nothing really in the pipeline to look forward to this year, then I almost would say, why not wait until you have something else? But you will say they don't need to, and they absolutely don't, I guess, for the diehard Nintendo fans out there.
The absolute sickos, of which I am one of them, will pay upwards of 70 English pounds for a new Kirby, and they do not need a 4K 120 Kirby.
You've been here from the start, but
yes,
like, surely every Nintendo console up until now has at least had something. It's had something new, even if it's been an iterative console.
Yes.
There's been a noticeable jump, even from the Wii to the Wii U, right? You've got the tablet. It's not much, but it's a selling point.
Right.
You've got the Switch. You've got its modular design. You've got the Wii with its motion controls. You've got the GameCube with its raw power back in the day. Nintendo 64 with its jump into like 3D. The NES to the SNES. Probably more than I'm mistaken, but there's always something to distinguish it to what came before. And I just feel like if the Switch 2 doesn't have that, I feel like it's a missed opportunity.
The nearest thing to this is when they did the 3DS to the 3DS XL, and it was a slightly bigger screen, and they stupidly, annoyingly, infuriatingly made it so that you could only play classic SNES games on the XL, and that was nothing to do with the capabilities of the system. We're talking about stuff from 1992, but something like Super Metroid or whatever, like Link to the Past, you'd have to buy a 3DS XL, but the 3DS to the 3DS XL, they were super, super similar.
Right. Okay.
I think that's what they're doing, because the Switch from 2017 onwards proved to Nintendo that they could kind of just dominate both markets at the same time. They didn't have to have a run of, because even then, if you go in the handheld stuff, you've got all the sort of modular changes, like Game Boy Advance to Game Boy Advance SP. That's the thought process, I think. So, and those things still sold really well. It was more about the form factor changes. Like, give me that. I mean, I love my little clamshell SP. It's lush. So I think it's that. I think they're applying ostensibly their handheld philosophy to the main console, and they're just going to see what they can get away with. And it'll be cool. It's not going to be called the Super Nintendo Switch. All the patent stuff just says Switch 2.
Yeah.
And I'm like, that's so boring.
I know. I suppose it is boring. From a boring marketing standpoint, I suppose it makes sense. It makes it clear to the sort of parents out there who are buying it for their kid this year that it's not just a spruced up version, or at least
they can't do a Wii U thing again.
Yeah, exactly. They can't do a Wii U thing again. And you've already got the Switch and the Switch OLED. Maybe having a Super Nintendo Switch without that 2 delineation would be a bit of a nightmare. I don't know, but I think I don't know. That's also not my issue, but my worry is that the Switch 2 implies the next generation of the Switch, right? And it implies
just the second one.
Jump. Just the second one.
More than one, isn't it?
It's the third if we're going on that. Just call it the Switch 3 after the Switch 2.
Don't give them ideas.
OLED. But no, yeah, I'm it's not that I'm not optimistic. I'm cautious a little bit about it, because Nintendo have burned me before, and I'm coming from the perspective of someone who doesn't want to hate on Nintendo, who wants that reason to buy in. I want to play more Switch games. I want to play more Nintendo games. And unfortunately, just from my perspective, the original isn't cutting it anymore. So I want that. I want it to come out and feel like I want to pre-order it day one. I want to
Yeah.
have either something on the technical side or the game side that makes it something that I can't miss out on, not just as someone who does this job and likes to cover the industry, but as a fan as well.
I'll be amazed. It's something so twisted for being a Nintendo fan. Where my expectations are so low. I'm not expecting them to have launch games. I'm not expecting them to have anything that's gonna, because the Switch launched with the Switch version of Breath of the Wild, which was a Wii U game. It was built for the Wii U. The inventory didn't even work very well on the Switch because it was made for the tablet. Like, I just don't care.
But at least the Switch was new. Like I said, it had the modular nature. It had that cool, unique feature. You had Breath of the Wild, it was in development on the Wii U, but then you had Odyssey. You had Splatoon announced, I think, at that time as well.
Yes.
I don't, Scott, if this was PlayStation, I don't know what, there's a sort of cognitive dissonance, I feel like, with some Nintendo fans, where it's like the Nintendo music thing. And suddenly Nintendo music is sound, even though it's
awesome.
like, oh, I can't get into this again.